This is Jalen, my legal warrior. Today we have Ivette Kuyateh, and she's an estate planning attorney locally here in San Diego. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Yes, Ivette Kuyateh of Kuyateh Law Group. Thank you, Jalen, for having me on your cast. I appreciate it. I think this topic is really crucial today as an estate planning attorney, and I'm happy to share some of what I'm experiencing and seeing and just sharing information.
Yeah, well, thanks for collaborating with me. So, one of the questions that, I think would be important for our viewership to have a grasp on is what shifts have you seen in estate planning during COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Right now with COVID-19, sickness and disease prevention is on the forefront of everybody's mind, right? And so with that, people have time to think of things that they wouldn't normally think of or actually act on, such as creating an estate plan, such as looking at what do I have in place in case that I get sick or my elder parents get sick or a loved one gets sick. So right now I'm feeling a lot of questions from clients that are just concerned and not really sure where to start. And just right now in that area of life where people want to be prepared and just make sure that things are in place, that's one of the major shifts we're seeing. In addition to that, right now everybody is working from home. And so we're seeing a lot of, our office is using a lot of technology to communicate with clients, as I'm sure you are as well, Jalen, to just make sure that we continue to provide services that are quality services to our clients and provide those much needed Q&As with them. So right now everyone's on videos, and so things like this that we're doing is really, really important. But yeah, I would say the number one thing that we're seeing is the increased interest and the increase of action being taken behind, okay, what do I have and how do I make sure that what I have is updated and it's going to serve me in case that I do need it or my family needs it.
So, speaking of, individuals that might, get sick, and perhaps that's why they want to figure out whether they should have an estate plan or not. If they do end up in the hospital, whether it's from COVID or from some other terminal illness, what should they be doing right now in order to protect those assets?
So prevention, right? Prevention is the number one thing that we can all do right now with just obviously making sure that we take precautions for our health, but also taking precautions, like I was saying, to make sure that they have an estate plan set up. And those that do, I run into people all the time that they say, oh, I have one from 20 years ago, I'm good. Well, guess what? That one from 20 years ago is outdated and it's going to be essentially worthless if something happens to you. So right now is a great time when everybody has a little bit more time, a little bit less distractions, to go ahead and get familiar with what do you have, what's in there, what maybe has changed since the last time you updated your things. And if you don't have one, just start the ball now. But if something does happen and someone does get sick, then immediately, at the very, very least, they should have an advanced healthcare directive and a power of attorney letter. So the advanced healthcare directive is a set of instructions that an agent of your choosing, can speak to medical professionals and talk about what medical decisions you would want made in the event that you can't speak for yourself. It's not necessarily for end-of-life decisions. Advanced healthcare directives protect you in any type of situation where you're just not able to verbalize. So that can be anything from a short-term hospitalization, a short-term surgical procedure, anything like that. You're a sole person at home and you would have nobody to go ahead and run simple errands for you, like going to the bank, cashing a check, picking up registered mail, normal everyday things. Without a power of attorney letter, your day-to-day is going to stop. And it's going to take some time from someone to be able to get that court ordered for you. So what I recommend people is if they do experience like getting sick, or I know someone's getting sick, have those things immediately put in place so that the day-to-day can continue. Specifically, just want to say with the power of attorney letter, and I want to clarify this, and as you know, Jalen, many people think, oh, well, I'm married, and so well, my husband can just do it. And that's not necessarily true. That is not automatic just by being married. As you know, you still, the certain bank entities and certain entities need an actual power of attorney letter. And so you don't want to leave your spouse or whoever just in the, timeline of trying to get everything done and doing it for you, just under the assumption that, well, we're married. That's not how it works. And a lot of people, as you know, Jalen, they think it is. So that being said, those would be the first two things at the very minimum. If there is time, obviously a will, that a will is a set of instructions that a judge will look at and see how you would want your wishes to be carried out in the event that you pass. Without that, the judge is going to use the probate code to go ahead and make those determinations. My least favorite thing to do is to have an emergency situation where now we're days within somebody losing their voice or their cognitive skills, or days away from death, and I'm working in a rush to make sure that these things are in place. So please, 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 prevention. I have a few of those cases right now. That is not fun. It's not fun for anybody, and it's extremely stressful for the family members. That's the least thing that people should be thinking of. And then lastly, of course, having everything in a trust, a properly funded trust. Specifically, those of you with properties, if you have properties, just to make sure that that home is protected under trust. The reason that that's important is because you want to save your family from going into probate. Right now, courts, as you know, Jalen, are backlogged. The probate court system is no different. Last I heard, there was like 9,000 cases just in backlog alone here in San Diego County. I'm sure it's like that everywhere. And so where normally it would be a long process to go through probate. And just backing up a minute, probate is where the judge decides who gets the property, right? Whether you have a will or not. If it's not in a trust, it will go through probate. That's another thing. People think that if I have a will, I won't go through probate. That's not true. Think of a will as just a set of instructions. That's all. But if you have a trust, your family never goes through probate. Your family it never has any of this go out in the public, and you name somebody to go ahead and take over and essentially distribute your estate according to your wishes. So I think I've clarified that with the most important to the goal. And so I think with prevention, the goal here is to hit that very, very important one, to just have a trust.
Yeah. So this actually inspires a couple of questions. These directives that you mentioned, are those automatically and exclusively part of a trust, or can someone just create those directives right now without actually establishing a trust?
If you've ever been in a hospital or gone under for any reason, one of the first things they'll bring you is a boilerplate advanced healthcare directive, and they'll ask, who would you want to make decisions for you while you're under? That's what that is. So no, anybody can go ahead and create one. I don't recommend that, just like I would not change my own oil in my car, or I wouldn't put my own highlights in my hair. I'm not that talented, and that's not my expertise, right? And so the reason I say that is because a properly drafted advanced healthcare directive is not going to be on a boilerplate piece of paper. I'm going to take the time, or another attorney will hopefully take the time to ask very specific questions about what you would want. And again, it doesn't have to be with the mentality of end of life, although it could cover things from immediate right now to end of life, organ donation, cremation, all of the end of life decisions. So you just want to make sure that if you do go and draft one, that it's a little thoughtful or thoughts put into it. But I would advise, as with anything, any legal document, to come and at least run it by an attorney so we can give you feedback and maybe give you things that you wouldn't necessarily think of the last thing you want is to have your family scrambling around, arguing, having tension about, well, what would they have wanted, right? And I've just seen it happen. And I know that with that, think of it like a piece of freedom that you're giving your loved ones, where there's no guesswork, there's no errors made, there's no guilt involved. They know what you would want.
Yeah. I have so many other questions, but I will ask you.
That's okay.
You did bring up earlier was individuals have come to you and said, well, wait, like I already have a healthcare directive from 20 years ago. And so it sounds
Right.
like there's an expiration date on the directive. And maybe because you mentioned the example of like, oh, if you ever go under, they have you sign something. So I'm assuming it's only under those particular circumstances that agreement would be valid. And then after those circumstances are no longer present, so they're out of surgery, then that directive is no longer enforceable, correct?
Right. Yeah, well, that it depends on how it's written, but generally, yeah, you're right. What I've seen more is actually like an advanced healthcare directive where your ex-husband or ex-wife is named, just as like in the trust or beneficiary. And you might not necessarily want your ex-husband or your ex-wife making those medical decisions for you, as you know, with divorce cases, right, Jalen? So
Yeah.
that might not be something that people want. And so it's always good to see what's in there. I have seen where people still have the ex-wife or the ex-husband as a beneficiary of a life insurance or a 401k. And so now's a good time to go make sure that that's all updated.
Yeah, it's very rare when you see a divorced couple still want to be in each other's lives, especially if they don't have kids, and still want to be in each other's lives, at least financially, and making those decisions that.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where people just put it off.
Yeah.
And they never get to it. So speaking of, I just briefly want to mention about procrastination, right? And so if you've heard, too busy to die, right? And I share this with my clients, like the Michael Jacksons, the princess of the world, lots and lots of money, huge estates. And then what happened? They just never got around to it, right?
Oh.
And so that's the majority of America is they know it's important. Everybody agrees that it's important, especially with kids. We all love our kids. We agree that it's important, but we just don't get around to it. So one of the ways that my firm right now is helping people with that is we are giving free copies of this book. It's called How Many Works, endorsed by the Heartland Institute that we partnered with. It talks about the 7 money milestones, and number 7 is estate planning. And it has those statistics in there about what percentage of America, I believe it's like 79% of Americans just wait around way too late to actually get a plan in place. So yeah, any subscribers to Jalen's YouTube or all her stuff, we're happy to partner with you too, because I believe if everybody for you that you're helping with family law, definitely families need to get this. So we're happy to send them a copy as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah. A little freebie in there. It's like Oprah. You get a book and you get a book.
I'm waiting for that car though.
I know.
So what are some tips our viewership can use when it comes to using an estate planning attorney versus an online template?
Well, I think it's about prevention, right? And prevention and avoiding costly mistakes, as with anything. So I'll talk about both of those. So, with the prevention, if you take your car, to get maintenance, they're going to tell you, okay, this and this and this and this is what's wrong with it, in order to prevent something happening down the road while you're driving it. Well, attorneys, doctors, we operate kind of the same way. Our expertise is there because we know of the blind spots that you don't. You might look at something like, oh, I'll just need this, and boilerplate language is fine, and that'll be great for my family. Whereas an attorney, we're going to sit down and hopefully take the time to get to know our client, what's important to them, what stuff do they not think it's important that actually might be important? All of those kinds of things, like, do you own a business? Do you have kids? Do you have a blended family? Do you have property in other states and other countries? Do you have any or expect any assets to come your way? Are you a beneficiary of anything? And if you're relying on a template for that, it could cost you in the end. Things can end up in probate because you forgot to properly exclude somebody, and now the family's fighting when something happens to you because you did it on a template and it doesn't pass the muster, and now the judge throws out your trust and your family's in probate litigation. So with an expert, we can help guide you to hopefully avoid that, because that's the whole goal, is trying to avoid those messes and avoid situations like that. So the other thing I'll talk about is just with the costly mistakes. Just to give you an idea, with probate in California, it just take a $500,000 house, and that's cheap. I don't know where you're going to find that in San Diego, right? But just think of that. Just in probate fees alone, minimum probate fees, you're going to look at around $30,000 for that home to go to probate. And those are expenses that you cannot get away from, really. And so avoiding probate for all other reasons, but specifically for that one, where now your family's, that $30,000 could have gone to them, now it's going to go to the court, for less than a fraction of that, to get a professional to look at it, invest in something that is good. And not only that, with somebody that you can have a relationship with, that can track you every year, that can update things for you, that can make sure that as things change for your family, for your business, for your home, whatever, that all of those changes are reflected and updated, and not just give you a folder, send you on your own, and no one ever calls you or updates your trust. So those two are my main reasons that I would not recommend just doing it. But if you have to, then at least try to at least run it by an attorney. That is my recommendation.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because if somebody can't necessarily afford the full scope services of having an attorney drafted, and I'm sure that's thousands of dollars, but they can't afford maybe a couple of thousands of dollars for consultation fees to review their, 30-page trust that they created or got off the internet, then that's a good use of their resources. So,
right.
And just to be clear, that once you do have a trust, or if somebody does have a trust, then it does not go through probate court, correct?
Correct, unless it's challenged or there are things that are not put into the trust. And so that's why I say having a trust from 20 years ago might be worthless, because it's not updated. All it takes is one piece of property that's not in the trust, and now you're back in probate. So you might as well not have the trust.
Yeah.
So a lot of people refinance a home, and they'll take it out of the trust to refinance it, and they never put it back in, or they just forget to, or they buy a new home, and that new home was never in the trust. So those are the kind of situations where people really need to look at that.
Okay, very interesting. And one final question. I know that you're licensed in California. Are you able to assist clients that are outside of the state of California? Are you actually able to establish their trust even though they might reside elsewhere?
Yes, I generally, if they're residing in California, if they're a California resident, yes. I'm also licensed out in the East Coast in Virginia. Just FYI, so I have both of those licenses. But yes, with the trust, if you're residing here in California, you're good. I do have the capability of using other state language to make it fit, just as a preference. I try not to, just because, again, it's the relationship, and it's the ongoing checkups every year. How are you doing? Has anything changed? And so although I could do it, I would advise those out-of-state clients to maybe consider somebody that's local to them, just so that even with all of the COVID stuff, just so that they have somebody that they can have a good relationship with.
Okay, I feel like I can just sit here and ask you a ton of questions for hours, and
You might have to do another one.
yeah, no, absolutely. I can't wait to have you on again. Thank you so much for your time and expertise. This was definitely quality information. And then how can our viewership get in touch with you?
But people can get in touch with me. I think the best way is they can email or call info at kuyatehlawgroup.com. And if you go to our Facebook page, right there, you'll see that we're running the offer for this all of this month. Anybody that wants a copy of this book, will mail one for free. We're on a crusade. I'm serious about it. Like, we just want people to be financially literate, and we're just really, really passionate about it. So that's how you can get a hold of us. And yeah, you can ask Jalen. She can direct you to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you, Warriors, for watching. And we hope that you stay safe.
Stay inspired.